Jorge Gras is an Ecuadorian citizen who sought asylum at the Mexican embassy in Quito in 2022 after being accused in Ecuador of multiple corruption charges related to his involvement in the public administration. Ecuadorian authorities considered Gras to be a key figure in a corruption scheme and sought his arrest. However, Gras argued that the charges were politically motivated and that, if extradited to Ecuador, he would face an unfair trial and human rights violations. For this reason, he requested asylum at the Mexican embassy. The asylum request was made in the context of political tensions in Ecuador, with opposition movements accusing the government of using the judiciary to target political dissidents. Additionally, the political climate in Ecuador raised concerns about the fairness of the judicial process. 2022, Ecuador deployed a contingent of police officers to attempt to enter the Mexican embassy in Quito to arrest Rory Gras, which violated international norms protecting the inviolability of diplomatic missions. The Ecuadorian police's attempt to enter the Mexican embassy without authorization was a highly controversial act, prompting a strong response from Mexico, which condemned the violation of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. Mexico defended its right to protect Gras under the principle of diplomatic asylum, while Ecuador argued that Gras should be extradited as the charges against him were not politically motivated. The Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations in 1961 establishes fundamental norms of the protection of diplomatic missions and diplomatic staff. The relevant articles in the context are: this article establishes the inviolability of embassies and states that no agent of the receiving state, in this case, Ecuador, may enter the mission without the consent of the head of the mission. The entry of Ecuadorian police into the Mexican embassy without authorization clearly violates this article. Although this article primarily protects diplomatic personnel, it underscores the principle of inviolability that extends to diplomatic missions. Any action that compromises the security of the diplomatic mission should be seen as a violation of international norms. This article ensures immunity for diplomats and missions, preventing them from being subjected to the jurisdiction or coercive measures of the receiving state. This principle is also relevant to asylum cases, as the decision to grant asylum must be respected. In relation to the Jorge's case, the entry of Ecuadorian police without Mexico's consent violated the fundamental principles of inviolability established in these articles. The Caracas Convention on Diplomatic Asylum 1954 provides the legal framework for granting asylum in diplomatic missions in Latin America. The key articles for this analysis are: Article at the right to grant asylum for reasons of political persecution is recognized. This article emphasizes the right of states to grant asylum, particularly in cases of political persecution, which is the primary argument made by George Gras. His asylum request can be understood within this framework, as he claimed political persecution by the Ecuadorian government. Article 2 Diplomatic asylum may be granted to persons who are in danger of suffering persecution. Asylum was granted to Gras because Mexico considered that, if extradited, he could face an unfair judicial process, which justifies his asylum under the conditions outlined in this article. Article 3 The state granting asylum has the responsibility to protect the person granted asylum. Mexico assumed the responsibility of protecting Gras within its embassy in compliance with this provision. Article 4 The state granting asylum shall not be obligated to extradite the person granted asylum. This article reinforces Mexico's position not to extradite Jorge Gras to Ecuador, as his asylum was granted under the context of political persecution. A relevant historical case involving violations of embassy inviolability is the Dominican Republic Embassy in Bogota in 1992, when Colombian police entered the Dominican embassy searching for a group of political dissidents from the Dominican Republic. The international community condemned this violation, emphasizing the inviolability of diplomatic missions and the fundamental principles established in the Vienna Convention. This case illustrates how similar situations have been handled historically, with the international community defending the inviolability of diplomatic missions and the need to respect the sovereignty of states when granting asylum. Mexico justified its decision based on international law, the inviolability of the embassy, and the protection of human rights. Mexico argued that the asylum was granted due to political persecution of Jorge Gras and that Ecuador should not interfere in its decision. Ecuador maintained that Jorge Gras should be extradited to face charges in Ecuador, as it considered the charges to be legitimate and not politically motivated. Ecuador also argued that the asylum granted was a way to evade justice. Yes, the granting of asylum was legal under the Caracas Convention, as Jorge Gras claimed political persecution, and Mexico acted within its right to grant asylum to individuals who faced the danger of persecution. Yes, it was a violation of the Vienna Convention. The entry of Ecuadorian police without Mexico's consent violated the inviolability of the diplomatic mission, a fundamental principle established in Articles 22 and 29 of the Convention. There is no absolute obligation to grant asylum, but states have the right to grant asylum, especially in cases of political persecution, and must justify their decisions based on human rights principles and the respect for the sovereignty of other states. As an advisor to the Ecuadorian government, I would propose a diplomatic solution based on dialogue and international cooperation. Mexico and Ecuador could resort to international dispute resolution mechanisms, such as the International Court of Justice, to clarify the legality of the actions taken by both countries. Uh, Additionally, it would be crucial to establish a direct communication channel between the governments to seek a solution that respects both Ecuador's sovereignty and Mexico's commitment to asylum and human rights protection.